Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much to everyone who's checked out the other video and my website. I've been overwhelmed by the feedback from that, so thank you. If you haven't seen the analysis video that I posted a little while back, just feel free to pop this one on pause and have a look at the other one if you want to. We are going to be using some of the techniques from that analysis video, so if you're unsure at any point, then you can always look back at it if you need some more scaffolding. Today we're going to start thinking about how we convert those analysis notes into high quality PEA paragraphs. PEA just standing for point, evidence and analyse, so you might have different letters for it in your school, but it would be the same skill set. So just like in many lessons, let's start by going over something that we learnt last time and just get ready to build on it. So we're going to be carrying on using the which, what, how, why method, and this time I'm going to give you a quotation from Macbeth to revise. Here is a comment that Lady Macbeth makes in her first appearance in Act 1 of the play. She's just come up with the idea to kill King Duncan, charming, and is going to persuade her husband to help her, because obviously that is a rational plan. She is alone at this point, and she is talking to evil spirits about what it will be like when the king arrives, because he's coming to stay at her house that night. So take a little look at it and analyse it to answer the question, how is Lady Macbeth presented as a powerful character? So the quotation, I'm just going to pop that in my little analysis diagram, is the entrance of Duncan under my battlements. I'm going to analyse it in a moment with my thoughts, just to demonstrate that to you once again, but why not stop the video now and see if you can interpret the quotation yourself? So why not pause it, jot it down on a piece of paper, have a little play around with the techniques that we looked at last time. Remember to highlight powerful words and phrases and then think, which word or language feature is that particular word I've pulled out? What does it reveal? How does it do that? And why is the writer doing that? What is the point? Okay, hopefully you paused and had a little go on your own. But here's some of the ideas that I've come up with. So the first word that stood out to me was my. I'm going to label that a possessive pronoun, and it conveys authority to me because it connotes that she's claiming ownership of that land and of that castle, and that clearly displays power, because a woman at that time would not have any legal right to own property, so she is seeing herself in a similar legal position to a man. She's claiming that house as her own, and also it appears as if she's claiming the territory, almost marking it, making it known that Duncan is entering her domain. That is powerful, because if you think about it, she's basically conveying that she makes the rules in this space and that she will decide what's going to happen. And for him, that means that she has the power over life or death. She has the power to decide what happens to him when he's there. I imagine a lot of people would also be zooming in on this word battlements, because that's particularly strong, isn't it, in this quote? So this is a metaphor in the statement here. And it projects power again, but by presenting her like a soldier. So this demonstrates that kind of power because it suggests that she's active in her effort to take Duncan's life, doesn't it? And it makes the audience see her as quite a ruthless character. So if you think stereotypically about soldiers and the military, it's very emotionless, isn't it? It's done on not rational thought, but almost impulse, and having to make a calm and detached decision, and that suggests that she has power over her emotion in that way, I think. And it insinuates that she sees herself in that powerful light, because she has the strength to do the just completely illogical thing, doesn't she, of considering removing the king. Remember, that is treason at the time. So she is committing a huge crime in doing that, and she doesn't appear scared of that decision at all, because quite frankly she's terrifying, isn't she? If you were going to go for a higher grade and maybe try and look at something a bit more perceptive that other students might not have pulled out, I think you could analyse the fact that she calls him Duncan as well. To me that insinuates power, because she's calling him by her first name, and if you think about it, That's something that we usually do with someone we're close to, someone we have equal status to, or a close acquaintance. So she's effectively stating that she sees herself as equal to the king. And remember that that's a man who the contemporary audience, so that means audience at the time, would believe was chosen by God. Okay, that he has the divine right of kings, that he acts as God on earth. So that is a pretty bold statement for her to be making. Why does Shakespeare do this? I think we could interpret that in two ways, couldn't we? We could go down the avenue of looking at female power and thinking that Shakespeare's perhaps challenging that social perception that women are not powerful, because while she doesn't have any political power, he could be arguing here that the power that she does have is overlooked or it's taken for granted, because she does have she has the courage, although I'm not really sure if that's the right word, and the power to decide to take down the king. She's the one who makes the plan. She is the one who persuades Macbeth to do this. She is in control. We could also think about how he makes that decision as a writer, because I think a lot of the time we are very rooted in context, which is important, but we have to remember that the writers are putting together a text and that characters and the plot are going to develop. So choices with the characters have to enable the play to move on and to be driven forward. So if we think about it in terms of character choices, we could think about what will happen to Lady Macbeth at the end of the play. So the audience know now that Lady Macbeth is determined to use her power to destroy Duncan, and that she feels powerful and she feels confident in doing that, which will obviously build a lot of tension when Duncan stays at the castle. So that's going to help to heighten that part of the play and heighten the audience's reaction to that, particularly when she greets him, because she greets him really kindly. But it's going to be more fundamental, I think, when the audience witness her downfall at the end of the play, because Shakespeare encourages the audience to consider the change in her at the end. It's so drastic that we have to think about how different it is to the woman that we encountered at the beginning of the play. And when we go back to consider that, we can think that it's all traced back to this moment, isn't it, on stage? This arrogance that she displays with her power, because she has a lack of consideration, I would put forward to you, in what she's doing in order to gain that power, and the reality that that's going to be and the consequences that that's going to have. And it's going to be that and that greed for power that's going to be her downfall. And Shakespeare's going to perhaps teach us a moral lesson there, I think. Obviously, remember that anything else that you've said in your notes, if you had a go at it, is completely valid. So as I always say to my students, unless you told me she was a cyborg who was programmed for world domination, if you had a different idea and you could link it to evidence in the play, then you were right. Okay, you're only wrong if you're telling me she's some kind of green Martian who has appeared on the stage. As long as you can ground your ideas in evidence and you can explain them, they are valid. Right. Let's get thinking about how we convert these notes then. So we're going to have a little look at the same question. How is Lady Macbeth, presented as a powerful character? And we need to think about all of the notes that we made in the diagram, because they are your plan. All right. So when we say to you, plan your answer, what we mean is annotate your quotations. Have a little think about the ideas you're going to pop on them. You need to keep looking back at that plan in the exam, okay? So don't make it and then think, oh, okay, that was a fun 10 minutes, and never look back at it for the rest of your life. Use it. But I won't be able to have it up on the screen with me here because, well, if I'm honest, I'm not very good with computers, so I have no idea how I do that. That's the honest answer. So I'm going to have to just talk you through what I'm doing there. Right, we're going to use that question, as I said. We need to think about the notes that we've just made and sum up what we've said in a sentence, which would be our point, or your topic sentence. So it's a sentence at the beginning of your paragraph that introduces your argument within that paragraph really clearly. It needs to be concise and it needs to link evidently with the question. Okay, so I'm going to actually steal words from the question to start mine off, which could be a useful little hint in the exam if you're not sure how to start things. So I think we've looked particularly at Shakespeare's use of language in her speech, haven't we? So that's going to be my starting sentence. Shakespeare uses the language in Lady Macbeth's speech to present her as a powerful character. And now I need the E. Okay, so that's the evidence. That's going to be the quote in the middle of my diagram. So I need to pop that on next. So I'm not going to use a quote that shows this is, because everybody's going to do that. I don't actually like using a sentence starter for it at all. I like my students to add a little semicolon and then pop their quotation in. But again, my IT skills are awful, so I am going to use a sentence starter, but I'm just going to jazz it up a little bit. So I am going to go with something like evidence that demonstrates this is. I'm going to pop my quote in. Then I'm going to start writing the analysis section, and that is the bit where students seem to get really confused, which surprises me because they often have beautiful ideas on their page and then it seems like they're not sure how to transfer that. So when you're writing that part of your paragraph, you want to follow the which, what, how steps. You will look at why. If you look at one key word from the quote, you'll obviously do which, what, how, why. If you look at more than one word from the quote, which I would suggest you do, you will do which, what, how with the first word that you've zoomed in on, which, what, how with the next word you've zoomed in on, and then add the why at the end. Okay, so the why should always appear at the end of your paragraph. So let's have a little look at the possessive pronoun part. I think I'm going to pop in there. So Shakespeare's use of the possessive pronoun my demonstrates that she's a powerful character because it reveals her authority in the castle due to her claiming ownership of it. So that's my which and my what and my how. It's very similar to the notes that I've made in my annotations earlier on. But just hopefully a little bit more fluent. Note that I've really tried to push vocab there. If I'm going for these top grades, my vocab in my analysis work needs to be carefully selected in the same way as it does in my creative writing. Right, I'm going to zoom in on another word. I had some good ideas for the soldier part and the battlements, but I don't think they go with the my part as well as the Duncan by first name. So that's going to be the idea that I link, because everything I write on my annotation sheet in the exam doesn't have to appear in my paragraph, so I need to be selective, and I think the Duncan idea is more perceptive and it's going to get me higher marks, so I'm going to carry that on. So the fact that she refers to her victim as Duncan further supports this. I've used further supports just to show that I'm building an argument there. Here she calls him by his first name, which is something that a person does with a close acquaintance or someone of similar social status, so she is ultimately insinuating that she is of equal authority to the king. I've used insinuating instead of shows because, again, I want to make myself stand out to the other from the other candidates when the exam marker is having a look at my paper. The contemporary society observed the divine right of kings, believing that the king acted for God on earth. So here she is placing herself in an omnipotent, which just means all-powerful, similar to God, and Shakespeare's portrayal of her at the beginning of the play is therefore fundamental, really important, to the audience's ability to understand her downfall later on. The dominance that she projects as she strives for power will ultimately lead to her downfall, and this is because her lack of empathy and kindness will prevent her from understanding the dangers of taking the throne forcefully and the inevitable anxiety that she'll feel when she's in Duncan's position. That last part sounds really posh, but basically all I've said is that it's shocking the audience because they think the king acts for God and that she's not really thinking it through, and it's going to backfire later on. But again, I've chosen my vocab very carefully. One thing to really think about for your literature PEA chains is your use of context. So the examiners really want you to think about the writer and the world that they were writing in, and how the play or the novel, whatever it is you're looking at, links to their personal ideas and their experiences and their society. But they don't just want it stuck on. Okay, so they don't just want a comment stuck on the end like, this would be really shocking because the king was really powerful. because that isn't adding anything to your argument. So look at the fact there that I've introduced it, I've shown off that I know it, but then I have really explained in that last part how that's relevant to my idea and how that supports the idea that I've had, because that's what they want from me. Okay, so hopefully that has helped. That is a really high grade paragraph. So yours might not look like that, but as long as it follows that structure, that's fine. Although I would say to you, vocab might be something you want to have a little look at over the next couple of weeks in the lead up to the exam. And I'm sure your teachers have said exactly the same to you recently. Obviously, that is just a very high-end model that I'm showing you, so feel free to put that forward in your own writing style. It's not going to be a replica of mine, okay? You could pause the video at this point and have a little go with the ideas that you had for that quotation earlier on, or if you would like to try out that technique on your own, why not have a little look at this question as well. So, how does Shakespeare present a change in Lady Macbeth's character at the end of the play? And I've given you the quotation, "All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." So why not draw out the quotation diagram, spend 10 minutes, or probably 5 actually, just annotating it, try out the which, what, how and why technique, and then have a little think about the things I've said to you in that video there, and have a go at writing your own PEA chain to that standard. I'm sure that your teachers would not mind if you started to do work at home and just ask them to have a little read through it. I'm sure they wouldn't mind even less if you asked them to do that and bought them a little bit of chocolate as a treat. How lovely would that be? So that's all for me today. Thank you for coming back if you have joined me for a second time. If you haven't, hello if it's your first video. If you would like to find out any more, particularly if you would like any free revision resources, why not head to my website, so www.mrshillrevision.co.uk. There's a whole student section on there full of revision tips for you, free revision resources, and there is actually a daily quotation challenge that you could be using that technique with, so feel free to take part. There's also a contact section on there, so if you want to drop me an email about anything in particular you'd like me to make a video about, please feel free to do that. I hope that you come back for the next video, and thank you for tuning in. Bye.